Hello dear friends, welcome back to the series in structural geology. In our last episode on the morphology of folds, we discussed a classification of folds based on the geometry, that is the style or the appearance of the fold on the profile section, and the orientation, that is the orientation of the three major parameters, the hinge line, the axial plane and the two limbs. At the end or near the end of the last episode, we discussed certain fold names that cannot be classified or that has not been named based on the either style or orientation. We will continue with some of those special types of folds and then go on to the geometrical classification of folds proposed by John Ramsay in 1967. Depending on the scales or size of folds, two names have been proposed by structural geologists, though not very commonly used today. To a student of structural geology, these names should be known. An anticlinorium is a very large antiform with a number of minor folds or higher order folds on its limbs and hinges. The amplitude may be in the terms of kilometers or tens of kilometers, while a synclinorium is a synformal fold of this scale. Depending on the shape of the hinge and the orientation of the axial plane, besides box fold, another name has been proposed by none other than Ramsay. The term is conjugate fold. The difference between a box fold and conjugate fold is that both have nearly flat hinges and double hinges on either side, double axial planes, but while in case of box folds, the two axial planes gradually merge together to form a single hinged fold at the core. In case of conjugate folds, the shape of the folded layers, successive folded layers, remain more or less constant and the two axial planes continue beyond each other after crossing over. Based on the appearance of the fold on the profile section, another set of names have been proposed. The name concentric or parallel folds have been proposed for certain folded sequences in which each surface, each folded surface represents concentric arcs of circles, and since the radii of curvature of the different surfaces are different but have the same center, the arcs are more or less parallel to each other, hence the name concentric or parallel. Another type based on the appearance on profile section is similar fold or folds with similar geometry. Unlike the first category, concentric or parallel, where the curvature of each folded surface gradually decreases from core outwards, in case of similar folds, all the folded surfaces have identical or nearly identical curvature. A third type of fold based on the appearance of the fold on the profile section involves not only a single fold but a set of antiforms and synforms taken together. In these type of folds, the thickness of a folded layer measured perpendicular to the layering, or also known as the true thickness or the orthogonal thickness of a layer, is minimum at the antiformal hinge and maximum at the synformal hinge. This type of fold geometry was described as supratenuous. So, when we discuss Ramsay's classification, we will see how his proposed classification matches well with these pre-existing ideas. Ramsay, instead of classifying single folded surfaces, used a folded layer and considered the variation in curvature between the two bounding surfaces of the layers. He called them the outer arc and the inner arc, the two surfaces. The curvature naturally guides the change in inclination of the two bounding surfaces of a layer, the two arcs, and the main point he used in his classification are the orthogonal thickness of a layer in the profile section, the thickness measured perpendicular to the two bounding surfaces. Number 2, the axial thickness, the thickness of a layer measured parallel to the axial trace on the profile section. And the third point he considered was deep isogons. Deep isogons, the term needs a bit of explanation. He considered that if lines are drawn joining points of equal dip on the two bounding surfaces, the outer arc and the inner arc of a layer, the line that we obtain is a line of identical dip. These lines he termed deep isogons. He found out that the curvature, the variation in curvature, the change in dip of the outer arc and the inner arc is reflected in the orientation of the deep isogons, and the orthogonal thickness and the axial thickness also changed with the pattern of deep isogons. According to the variation in orthogonal thickness and the deep isogon pattern, the arrangement of the deep isogons from one inflection point across the hinge to the other inflection point, he identified 3 classes of fold. His class 1 folds have the inner arc curvature always greater than that of the outer arc, or in other words, they have a lower radius of curvature than the outer arc. In his class 2, both the arcs, the outer and inner boundaries of a layer, have identical curvatures, while in his class 3 folds, the outer arc is more curved, has a smaller radius of curvature, while the inner arc is less curved, have a greater amount of radius of curvature. He further subdivided his class 1 folds into 3 subclasses, but before we go into that, let us consider the variation in isogon pattern, the deep isogon pattern in the 3 subclasses. Since the curvature of the inner arc is always greater than the outer arc, it is most logical to understand that if we move from the hinge point, that is a point with 0 dip, if the curvature is greater, we will reach a fixed amount of dip quicker. If the curvature is lower, we will have to travel a longer distance to reach the same dip or inclination. Thus, from the hinge outwards, we will have deep isogons that will converge towards each other. So, in class 1 folds, the deep isogons are always convergent. In class 2 folds, since the curvature of the outer and inner arcs are identical, the deep isogons are mutually parallel to one another, since it will take the exact distance from the hinge on the to a point on the limb to reach the same inclination along the outer arc and the inner arc. Thus, the deep isogons are parallel. While in case of class 3 folds, in which the outer arc is more curved than the inner arc, the deep isogons are divergent. Accordingly, the thicknesses, the orthogonal thicknesses and axial thicknesses also vary. Before we go into that, let us talk about the subclasses, further subdivisions of class 1. Class 1 folds with convergent deep isogons are subdivided into class 1A, 1B and 1C. Class 1A folds are those which have a strong convergence of the deep isogons. Beauty of Ramsey's classification is that the strong convergence is not only qualitative, but he quantitatively defined the strong convergence. Ramsey classified his class 1 folds into 3 subclasses: class 1A, subclass 1B and subclass 1C. The basis of this subdivision is not qualitative, but very quantitative. In the subclass 1A, the deep isogons are strongly convergent. I will shortly come to the point what we mean by strong convergence. The second class, subclass, subclass 1B has moderately convergent deep isogons, while in subclass 1C the deep isogons are weakly convergent. The strong convergence is quantitatively defined by 2 angles: angle alpha, the angle between the tangent drawn at the point of dip with the horizontal, or in other words the dip of the folded layer at that point, and the angle theta, the angle that the deep isogon makes with the axial trace of the fold on the profile section. When theta is greater than alpha, the convergence is quantitatively described as strong. In subclass 1B, the moderately convergent deep isogon class, alpha and theta are equal, while in subclass 1C, in weakly convergent deep isogons, the angle theta between the deep isogon and the axial trace is less than the angle alpha, the amount of dip of a particular deep isogon. Thickness variation in these 3 subclasses are also very interesting. If we look at the orthogonal thickness, which is represented by the letters small t, the orthogonal thickness is minimum at the hinge of subclass 1A and gradually increases as we move away towards the limbs, towards the inflection points. In subclass 1B, the orthogonal thickness at the hinge and on the limbs till the inflection point is equal or nearly so. Or in other words, if we go back a little, the subclass 1B is identical with the concentric or parallel folds described earlier in this episode. In subclass 1C, the orthogonal thickness at the hinge is greater than the orthogonal thickness at the limbs. Ramsey introduced another parameter he called T dash alpha. The orthogonal thickness at the hinge is T0, that is where the orthogonal thickness where the dip is 0, and T alpha on the limbs where the dip is alpha, and T alpha by T0 he described as T dash alpha. He put the value of T dash alpha along the y axis and the angle alpha along the x axis for all the classes of folds he described. In case of class 2 folds, the orthogonal thickness is maximum at the hinge and becomes gradually less and less until the dip of the limb becomes 90 degree, where it becomes 0. In case of class 3 folds, the orthogonal thickness is again maximum at the hinge and becomes smaller and smaller on the limbs, but it never attains 0. Next parameter the axial thickness or thickness measured parallel to the axial trace on the profile section also varies accordingly, and Ramsay proposed a graph showing this variation. He represented the axial thickness by capital T and also introduced a parameter capital T dash alpha, which he defined as capital T alpha by capital T 0. This parameter saw that changes from one class to the other and remains constant in case of class 2 folds. Thus, if the axial thickness remains constant, the deep isogons are mutually parallel. That means that the curvature of the outer and inner arcs are identical, or in other words, these folds, the class 2 folds, are synonymous with the similar folds described earlier. In case of supratenuous folds, where the orthogonal thickness is minimum at the antiformal hinge and maximum at the synformal hinge, they belong to two different classes of Ramsay. When the orthogonal thickness is minimum at the antiformal hinge, it represents class 1A, while the maximum thickness at this informal hinge represents a class where the outer arc is more curved than the inner arc, or in other words a class 3 fold. Thus, Ramsay's classification, which is very scientific, very quantitative, amply covers all the folds, and it must be kept in mind that a single fold, a single natural fold may not belong strictly to one particular pigeonhole, one particular subdivision of Ramsay's classification. It may have one type of geometry in one part and a different type of geometry in another. Well, that concludes the geometrical classification of folds, the conventional one and the classification proposed by or developed by Ramsay based on three very scientific parameters, very well documented quantitative parameters. Folds, as we have seen till now, are regular curvatures on pre-existing planar surfaces in rocks, in sedimentary rocks or in metamorphic rocks, in primary planar structures or secondary planar structures. Typical nature of folds is that they have a systematic variation in orientation and style in some varieties, and identical curvature or identical profile shape in some varieties. While we discuss the mechanism of folding in our next episode, we will be discussing how a particular geometrical feature, a particular geometrical or morphological class of folds develop in response to a particular type of deformation. Fold morphology, as we have discussed in the 2 episodes, is an important aspect of structural geology, because from the fold morphology we can find out how a particular fold was formed, under what tectonic conditions, what stress, what kind of stress directed from which direction actually caused the folding. It also helps us in establishing the overall nature of tectonism in a particular terrain. It also helps us in locating a ore body or a source of hydrocarbon. For example, the hinges of folds, especially antiformal folds, are very good sources of petroleum and crude petroleum and gas. Hinges of antiforms and synforms are good places where mineral veins, metallic minerals can accumulate. Identification of folds, the interpretation and analysis of folds is extremely important. By the way, while we will be talking in details about this in our next episode. Let us mention here that folds are product of ductile deformation. We know that rock bodies are normally brittle substances. That is, you cannot bend a rock. A rock, if we put too much pressure on it, it will break, but it will not bend. So, during the discussion on mechanism of folding, we will be discussing how rocks which are normally brittle behave as ductile substances when tectonic stress is applied on them. Before we go on to the mechanism of folding, the way how folds are formed, how the mechanism is related to the geometry of a particular fold, let us discuss certain important questions and answers. Students are often asked in the exam that how to define a fold. I think the definition of a fold is fairly clear by now, that it is a regular series of curvatures on all parallel planar elements within a sequence of rocks which have been tectonically produced. The amplitude and wavelength should be identical or similar in all the layers. In our next episode, we will be discussing how the wavelength and amplitude of the folds may vary from layer to layer depending on their property. Next important question are the parts of a fold. A student of structural geology should be able to draw a fold in profile section and mark on it all the important parts of a fold, like the hinge, the limb, the inflection point, the hinge point, axial plane, fold axis, hinge line, etc. The third important question of folds is, from the description of a fold, a student should be able to name the fold, and from the other end of the spectrum, if the name of a fold is given, the definition should automatically jump to the mind. These are very important in understanding of folds. Next episode, we shall be discussing how folds form in nature and how the particular type of mechanism governs the geometry of the folds, how a normally brittle rock layer can be folded in a continuous curvature. These are going to be discussed in our next episode. Please stay tuned.